Good day everyone, and welcome to this description of the new instrument from DMA. The instrument is still very lightweight, easy to handle, and we'll give you all the details of it shortly. It's a growth instrument from the earlier Mps43, which we've had out in the world for some little while, and with feedback from our customers we knew some good things that would be useful to put into the instrument. So now we have the 43B, and that's the one we're going to be talking about. In a moment we'll be making a close-up of the instrument, but just for a quick idea of what we're going to talk about, I'm showing you on the tabletop here. We will talk about the paperwork, the manuals, the calibration. We talk about the remote control units that we're able to offer. We talk about the instrument itself, and I shall take everything to pieces in a moment. Talk about the pneumatic pipe work, etc. So let's get down now to showing you the detail. Okay, well now we've reorganized the instrument so that I'm able to talk to you about all the different features. You'll see that we've removed the lid. We can do that so that it's not in the way when you are working on tabletops or whatever. So going round it now, remember what we have. We have an instrument which is fully remotely controlled, pitot-static and pitot total, all 100% under your control. The pitot-static connectors, we use the AN4 and AN3 connectors. Come back to the other one in a moment. The instrument weighs 10 pounds, 4.5 kilograms in round figures. With the batteries, we've increased the battery life of this instrument. It's now 1 hour with the AC, and the AC is anywhere between 90 and 260 volts and 48 to 440 hertz. So it will operate on any AC in the world that we can think of, and in addition, the aircraft supply having the 400 hertz capability. In addition, now we've included as a standard feature 28 volts DC, so that again you can use it remote from AC. The power was turned on via the connector, which is now internal within the whole front panel. It is now one single front panel, which has improved its waterproof capability. The fuse at 4 amps is all we need. Here we have an antennae for when we're using this with a remote control on Bluetooth. We have the 2 manual letdown valves for emergency. We have the keypad for those that prefer a keypad, or we have the colour touchscreen in addition, which you can work from either this or this. We will power it up in a moment. We have the static and the pitot output ports. We have the vacuum output ports for the adapter hold down. We have the external RS232, which our corded remote control utilizes for talking to the instrument. Okay, and in addition to the pitot and static connectors on the front panel, we now have the ability to offer optionally these extra outputs, as we've talked about, for running 3 independent, or even 4 if you count this, channels. And we explained Captain First Officer Standby as an example of where that might be useful. Okay, the battery power that we talked about, of course, gives you the ability not only to work remotely, but also very importantly, that if you need to shut the instrument down for some reason, with the battery you are controlled down to ground level, and that's a very important feature. The instrument has got 2 internal pumps, one vacuum, one pressure. They're guaranteed for 1500 hours operation. They only run when necessary. They actually feed a small volume internally, and their object in life is to keep those vacuums ready to be used. Now, if you've gone back into a measure mode, you don't need the pumps running, so they save life, and that's very useful. Okay, well now we've connected the AC supply, we can now do a startup. We press the power key and the instrument goes through its own startup routine, gives serial numbers and running hours, things of that nature, when it was less calibrated. From there, it will take a standard procedure, which is always to vent to ground level, so that when you start using the instrument, it's going to automatically go to ambient. It's saying it knows what ground pressure is, it will take us there. So it's doing this auto venting. In a moment or two, when it's finished, it will show us venting finished, essentially. And we can then get on and start to use the instrument live. While we're waiting for that, you'll see that the screen has actually got essentially 4 segments. 1, 2, 3, 4, where we have altitude, altitude rate, airspeed, and airspeed rate. And we just go between them, as we will in a moment, and select the state that we want them to be in. So the venting has ended. We can go on and start to use the instrument. Just before we do, in the bottom corner here, you have the ability, if you wish, to actually change the units that you're using. If we press the unit key, and instead of being in feet, and you could have meters or hectometers. If we go to airspeed, and we go to units, then you can have knots, kilometers per hour, miles per hour, etc., whatever you want to work in. So now, if we want to change from aeronautical units, we can go to engineering units, and then going to the value we want, we can go to the units. It tells us the already speed, knots, kilometers per hour, etc. But we want to go to engineering units and decide what unit we would like. And for example, inches of mercury. And now instead of the PS channel being in feet, it's now in inches of mercury. And if we went, we've already done it actually, the QC is also in inches of mercury. So you have the ability to use whichever particular parameter that you like to use. Okay, if we go, while we're still on, this is another good one to look at. Normally, of course, we would show you the PS and we'd show you QC, which is the difference, of course, between PS and PT. We're at 0 QC because we're at a 0 speed. If I want to, with this key, I can switch over and look at the 2 absolute pressures. And of course, now we've got exactly the same numbers for each one. We'll go to QC being the normal at the present time and go back to aeronautical and go back to aeronautical. So there we are, we're back in feet and knots. So we've set up the display as we would like it to be. Now we can go and start actually asking for pressures. So now we can put in demand values for altitude. Put in 2500 feet. We've introduced that new demand value. We want to go now and enter it with the enter key and go from measure to control, and we will now begin to approach that value at the rate that we've requested, which is 3,000 feet per minute, and it will continue to rise, running at that particular rate until it gets very close, and then it will slow right down to make sure that we don't overshoot, so that if we're doing a hysteresis test, it's beautiful. You're not going above the value and coming back again. We can, if we wish, additionally go to airspeed while that's happening, and we can input there another value, let's say 150 knots, enter, and now that will also begin to go at a rate of 300 knots per minute. And the 2 will work independently, totally under control of each channel. And as you will see, we're now approaching the 2,500 we asked for, so the rate of climb is closing down very quickly to make sure we don't go over the top. Here you're also seeing that on airspeed the rate is coming down to make sure we don't go over the 150. And this is how simple it is to actually call for the value that you're looking for. Remember, you hit the particular segment, you enter the value that you want, you press enter to qualify that that's what you're looking for, and hit the control key if you're in measure. You saw there then they worked independently. We started the altitude and then we did airspeed. You can actually also put them in while it's still in the measure mode and then press control, and they will then begin exactly at the same time. So whichever way you would like to operate. Other things that you have available to you. You see that on the altitude channel we have the 2,500 feet that we asked for. There is the ability with these up and down keys here in the green, they're able to give you incremental changes to the value that you've looked for. So if I press the up key, it's gone from 2,500 to 2,600, again 2,700, and the same is on all the different parameters. What is important to understand is you saw that we changed from 2,500 to 2,600, 2,700. It's operating at the moment on the 100 digit, but you can set up what those keys mean. You could even set it so that one press would change it to 2,501, 2,502, etc. So it's a useful feature. We're getting to the stage now where we fairly well talked about the business of entering the value. On the bottom here I want to show you the stabilization statement. What it means is that when we've asked for a new value, when it gets very close, it will enter a stabilization mode where it gets to that tiny fraction of where we want to be finished. And it's got there at the moment because the stabilization note has disappeared. Okay, we're now at some sensible operating values, 2,700, 150 knots. And we could, of course, now go back to the measure mode. The pumps have finished off. The control system is no longer operating. This is now just a very expensive pressure gauge. And we can use this to actually see whether we have any leaks. Because if this was diving down at an enormous rate, you've got a leak and you have to investigate it. If we go to leak test, you'll see that it's now running up in seconds, and you could wait for the desired time, or you could go to time, set up how many minutes you want it to run for. At the moment it's set at 1, you can make it whatever, press go, and it's now going to time down. Okay, no longer just up but down, and at the end of that time you will have the values that you need in terms of the altitude drop and the airspeed drop, which can then go into your manuals or test routines. Interestingly, while we're in that screen, we're running on external AC power at the moment, but if I wanted to, I can remove the AC power, and it is now running 100% on battery, and it isn't disturbed at all. Everything is fine, as we say, for a battery life of 1 hour. Still coming down, but now all are under battery control. That doesn't matter. Then we can replace the AC, and with no change whatsoever, you have the answer that you had over that time, -16 as the drop in altitude and 0.1 knots. That's good. So it's closed. Okay, now perhaps we're at the end of the test and we can take it down safely to ground level, and we can use the venting key. So we press shift and vent and go. And it's taking us now to the ambient pressure, just as it did when we started. And it's taking us down so everything is stable at ground level. Just while it's doing that, let's talk about a few other conditions. We have not yet gone around the entire keyboard, which will do that when it gets down to the ambient pressure, just for clarity. We can, as you see, on the 1 key, the upper state is the LCD. That is merely the ability for you to alter the light level of the display. The remote key on the 4 we will talk about in a few moments when we discuss the remote control of the instrument. Again, it would be shift and remote. The next one is the TAS IAS, that's true airspeed or indicated airspeed. If we press shift and the TAS IS, it would enable us to go into changing the airspeed, which generally speaking is associated with indicated airspeed, and we could convert it to true airspeed. When we do that, automatically it would tell us, please enter the temperature, because with true airspeed you need to know what the temperature is of the probe and the sensor in the aircraft. Next one round, ULS. ULS is ultra low speed. Ultra low speed means that we can reconfigure the instrument so that rather than working over the full range of the airspeed, you can go and work over 0 to 200 knots instead and get a better accuracy at those very low airspeeds. For example, if you were working on a helicopter, as an example, you'd best be using the ULS key. Okay, servicing parameters, that's just about it. Just an example, if we show you the TAS as an example, there we are, it enables you to put in whatever the TAS is you want. So we could hit that, tell us that we want to have an ambient temperature of 20 degrees C, enter, and now back we'll find that the airspeed channel is now in that new mode. Look at another of the keys, which is the menu key. This gives us the ability to see lots of other capabilities. So go shift and menu, and here we have a new screen which tells us things that we can change. One of them is limits. At the moment this is set for 55,000 feet, altitude minimum of -2,000, altitude rate of 6,000 feet per minute. We can go in there and change them to our heart's content. Okay? If you do change them, they will only be for the life of this instrument while it is powered on. Later, when you've switched off and come back, the original factory settings will be present. If you want to change them permanently, you can do this, but it's all via the calibration manual where only people who are authorized to change it would be permitted. Okay, go back and go again now to shift menu, functions. Functions gives us the ability to look at Mach in addition to airspeed. EPR, we can go to engine pressure ratio, and you can set up PS as the pressure at the inlet to the engine and the QC as the value outside, or the PT value, at the rear of the aircraft, and you can then dial into the instrument what EPR you would like, and it will take you to there. Going again now to shift and menu, settings, and it won't let me. Exactly, it won't let me because again it's got to be a senior authorized person to get in there, and exactly how to do it would be in the calibration manual. Back to that, and finally shift and menu, maintenance, and if I hit that it would tell me exactly the same as settings. The ordinary guy doing his job on the flight line or on an avionics bay bench shouldn't be messing with the maintenance. We do tell you how to do it, and it's all in the calibration manual. Okay, we mentioned earlier, right at the beginning, that we have remote control units. We have the corded version here, which is then connected through to the RS-232 port, which we'll do in a moment. And we additionally have a wireless version, and the wireless version is literally that. It has no cable, and you can operate it in either the Wi-Fi mode or in Bluetooth. We'll demonstrate the Bluetooth method in a moment or two when we move on to connecting everything up. Okay, well, we've connected now the MPS-RC, as it is called, we're still at the moment controlling from the screen. If I want to put the control onto the remote here, I go to Shift and Remote. It says which type of remote would we like. Well, we're on the RS232. We press that, and what happens is now we're in control on the remote. As simple as that. The keypad is almost identical. It's got a few little differences, but nothing important. And that means now that if I go to altitude and I say go to 500 feet, enter, I am now in control, and we'll do that when I go to control. And here we are. So we're now operating it from this remote, and it will take us to the value that we're interested in. A plus point is that it also shows you on the local one, even though you're not controlling it from there any longer. If you've finished the use of the remote, you would go to Shift, and it says, do you want to exit remote? The answer is yes. And what will happen is your control is now back there, and this screen is saying I'm no longer in use. So that's all about the remote control using the MPS-RC remote control unit. Okay, we'll pause for breath for a moment now while we set up for the wireless remote control unit, which is the MPS-RW. So we're now in the remote mode. So we've turned the unit on, and it will now begin its startup routine. It comes up and shows the DMA logo. It is now linking itself to the air data test set, and we have now the ability to turn the connection on. Please wait while it establishes the link. Okay, and we're connected. The first screen it comes up with is to make sure that the limits that you're working to are acceptable, and you can change them if you wish. But if we can say accept limits, it now brings you up with the new screen that you would use for using the wireless control unit. Funnily enough, not funnily enough at all, it is exactly the screen that you would see if you were running your air data test set, not from a remote control cable version, but straight into your PC. In your PC, we would advise loading the AdWin software that we provide, and then you would get this exact situation. It's different to what you had, but it's not so very different. It's easy to understand. You can go to the command value, you can enter in whatever you would like. Okay, we go to control, command value, and we enter whatever we want in there. No, we stay with feet. We just want a command value. Right, and we can put into there 2,000 feet and say OK, equivalent to enter. Go to the control mode and go. And there we are. We're going off to the 2,000 feet that we've just asked for at a rate of climb of 3,000 feet per minute. We're not changing the airspeed at the moment, so that's not relevant. And in other words, it's a different display, but in essence, you have the same capabilities on here as you had on the test set itself. It would be nice to go through and show you all of those, but time is of the essence. So I think we now say that's how we use the remote control. Switching it off. And we're finished with the wireless remote control unit. We were using the Bluetooth capability, but you can actually set it up also for Wi-Fi if you prefer. Okay, I think we've pretty much finished all that we want to do. Do we want to end remote control? Yes. There we are. So I think we'll draw to a conclusion the test description. I hope it's been useful. Now we've just a few extra points to cover before we're finished altogether. Okay, just to mention to you some of the associated items with the air data test set. It comes complete with operating manual, not only for the air data test set itself, but also for the remote units. It comes in addition with the calibration certificates from ourselves, showing exactly how we've come to the conclusion that it is indeed within the RVSM limits and better. We can supply, if you want it, the previous unit if it's an instrument that's been in service. When it's brand new, of course, it would be just one calibration sheet. If it's an instrument that's been in service and has come in for repair or maintenance, we can actually give you the previous calibration sheet and the present one so that you can see any difference. Moving on, we've already shown you the remote units. One small point really is we supply for the pitot and static outputs suitable hoses. We use coloured transparent hoses. People sometimes like the more heavy duty ones, but we prefer these. It reduces the amount of load that you have on your pitot static adapters. It's transparent so you can see if there is any dirt which gets inside there, so that's important. Just one more thing to mention is that any information that you need is on our data sheet. It gives you a whole host of capabilities and specifications all on the rear sheet. So thank you very much. That's the end of our little description. I hope it's been beneficial to you. Thank you very much for giving us your time.